This production is brought to you and sponsored by the Women's Leadership Program at WVU Tech. So on behalf of the committee for the Women's Leadership Program here at WVU Tech, I'd like to welcome Dr. Andrea Kent from our Business, Humanities, and Social Sciences College. She is the Assistant Professor of Political Science at Tech and also an IDEA Fellow with WVU. She has a background and experience in American politics, comparative politics, world politics, international relations, constitutional law, terrorism, global issues, elections, public opinion, political activism, and participation. She teaches broadly across the political science discipline with courses on American, state, local, and comparative politics, international relations, global issues, constitutional law, and terrorism. Her research interests focus on the linkages between political behavior, public opinion, and political institutions. She was selected as an IDEA Fellow in 2018 with a focus on bringing innovation, problem solving, and entrepreneurial thought into the social science classroom. Dr. Kent holds a PhD in political science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where she focused on comparative politics with a subspecialty in American government. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know many of our students know you and have worked with you on various things across campus, but thank you for sharing your expertise today. And we'll jump right into the questions, but we really want to make sure that our students, faculty and staff, and members of the community watching this video can learn a little more about being prepared and an informed voter. So this is all about that. We are getting ready to, voting is happening right now. So we are in the midst of that. So just want to start with some big picture topics here. Why is it important for folks to vote?
Well, Jen, thanks for having me here. Election season is always exciting for political scientists, so I'm happy to talk about these things. The importance of voting is multifaceted, but really voting is fundamental to democracy in and of itself. We the people cannot tell our government what we want them to do if we can't tell them who we want to be governing for us. And so this is how we select those people. We have fought long and hard in the United States to expand voting, to expand the number of people that have the options to vote. And it's a real privilege for many people to be able to do this. It is ultimately how we hold government accountable. So it's not only how we choose people that we want to serve for us in government, but it's also how we choose to remove people from government that we don't like what they've been doing for us. And so voting is this fundamental interplay between citizens and our government.
Well, that's definitely a great segue into our first question, which is still big picture, but got some details and some task list for folks who are wanting to be prepared to vote. What do folks need to consider when making a plan to vote, and how do they know what the best plan for themselves are for them to go to vote?
Okay, yeah. I really think there's sort of probably 4 or 5 stages ultimately to this. First, you've got to be registered to vote. Then you got to get informed to know who you're going to vote for, what you're voting for. Then you got to pick your voting method. So we can vote absentee, we can vote in person, what works best for you. Know your dates and know your deadlines. So hopefully everybody knows November 3rd is the in-person election. But if you're doing some of those other things, there's some other dates and deadlines you should know. And then follow through. So it's so easy to do all those extra things and then not actually make it out to vote. So make sure you actually go and do that.
No, that's really important because we can plan, but that follow through is really what it's all about and what we need to do. But we can't follow through if we haven't done the legwork in advance of that. So getting registered, let's start with that. Talk a little bit about how folks can get registered and what they need to know to do that.
Yeah, registering is step number 1. There are just a couple of states where you don't need to register ahead of the election. West Virginia is not one of those. You have to register ahead of time in order to be able to vote. This is basically the way that the county knows who's going to show up to vote, and they can double check that. So in West Virginia, our date is October 13th. You need to register. Our Secretary of State's office has a very good website for all things voting related in West Virginia, so govotewv.com. is really simple, and it's got all sorts of information, but one of the most simple ones is registration. And you can go in there and you can check your registration. If you know you've registered in the past, but it's been a while, you can double check to make sure they've got your information correct. You can update it online. So all of this is available on the web and is pretty straightforward. But yes, you do have to register to vote ahead of time, and our deadline is coming up in about a week from today. It'll be Tuesday the 13th.
Well, if nothing else, this is very timely, making sure that folks get all the steps that they need to do to be able to do that follow through, and that's really important to get started. So before we get into their voting method, talk a little bit about how folks can be informed and prepared to go vote.
Yeah, information can be hard to come by, and not just because it's not out there, but sometimes because there's so much information out there. But being informed really matters. There's nothing wrong with voting with partisanship, voting by the indication there, but knowing more about what you're getting into, especially in your local elections where you may not have the nice D's and R's next to the names to know who you're supposed to be queuing on, can be helpful. I like to look in a couple places. Simple Google search, there's nothing wrong with that. Almost all candidates at this point have websites and have an online presence, so you can get to know them and get to know their official sort of party or official policy positions there. Another place I like to look that people may not be quite as aware of are endorsements. There are a lot of organizations that are out there that are monitoring the elections for us. And so if there are organizations that you follow that you are interested in, you may look there. They may have candidate ratings, reviews. Some organizations send out entire surveys to candidates to have them fill out so you can get to know them better. And so that may be a sort of a second round way to get more information. There's also a couple clearing websites that collect this kind of information. And so another one that I really like to use is vote411.org. It's a very simple website. It's got registration stuff, it's got other things, but it also has ballot information and candidate information. And so it's run by the League of Women Voters, nonpartisan group. It's a really good website for general information about the election. So yeah, go online, find their own web pages. If there is a debate, clue into that, read the summaries at least for the debates so you can see what they're up to, and look for endorsements. That's a good way to find out which candidates align with your interests or not.
And that's an excellent point. Obviously, we hear a lot about national races and debates related to that, but we do have organizations in our local counties that host Meet the Candidates events or debates related to local elections. Talk a little bit about voting up the ticket. You talked a little bit about researching some of the local level races, but really the importance of doing the homework on all of the races and all the candidates on the sample ballot and being prepared before you go, not just that headliner race that we've all been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a presidential election year. Everybody knows who the presidential candidates are. We all probably have pretty strong opinions on who you're going to vote for there. But yeah, you don't know the things further down the ballot. So I just got my absentee ballot in the mail the other day. They've got a bunch of statewide, we're electing U.S. senators. We mostly know those candidates. But when you start getting into your state legislators, your county sheriffs, those might be things that you don't know as much. And so do look at those. I'm glad you mentioned sample ballots because sample ballots are published in local newspapers and they are available online. So again, if you're trying to do your research there and you just don't even know what's going to be on, track down those sample ballots and yeah, do your homework. Pull it out beside you and look at it. I may be foreshadowing here. You can't take your cell phone, anything electronic or internet connected into the polling place with you, but you can take a crib sheet that's handwritten. So there's no reason not to have that information for you when you get there.
Yeah, after doing all that homework, you may want to take some notes and thoughts about
yes,
that.
You don't have to memorize these things. You can write it down and take that in with you.
We're informed, we're prepared, we've registered to vote, now we're ready to vote. So talk a little bit about making that plan and knowing how you're going to vote.
Okay, so there's a couple options when you choose how to vote. The two main ones, you can vote absentee, which means a ballot will be sent to you and you have to return it then, or you can vote in person. So absentee voting in West Virginia particularly is one where anyone can vote absentee at this point. You do have to have an excuse to do that, but COVID is an excuse. And so you can click that box on your electronic request and do that. You can electronically request your absentee ballot. So that same website, govotewv.com, has a big red button on it that says request my absentee ballot, and your county will send it to you. I requested mine last week. I got it within the week. It's very timely, very easy. I like absentee voting for a couple reasons. One, you've got a little bit more time to do that. You can also do your homework and do your research and not have to take your crib sheet with you, because you can just fill it out. So absentee ballot voting can be really simple. You can do it ahead of time. They're already, since mid-September, we've had people absentee voting in West Virginia. So you can do that now. You can request an absentee ballot up until the last week of October. So you still have a little time to figure that out. The more traditional way most of us think of voting is in person. And so you can, of course, go and vote on election day at your polling place. Again, if you don't know where your polling place is, check out that Go Vote WV website and it will tell you where that is. You can go on the day. We also have a lot of early voting that's going to be available beginning in a couple weeks here. So you can vote in person still. You can still go to a polling place and go behind the screen and click your favorites. But you don't have to wait until November 3rd to do that. Again, if it fits better in your schedule, there are several, at least 2 Saturdays that will be included during that early voting period. So if that fits better with your schedule than trying to make it specifically on Tuesday the 3rd, vote in person, but vote early. That's another option for you.
So if folks are voting in person, whether it be early or on election day, what should they be prepared for? What should they know? What should they bring with them? What can they not bring with them? You already mentioned a little bit about that, but I'm sure we've got some first-time voters viewing this video, so I want to make sure we share that information and a good refresher for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So polling places are all, many of them are arranged a little differently than one another because they can be anywhere. They're in schools, they're in town halls, they're in courthouses, they can be in churches. So the layout may be a little different, but the first thing you'll do when you come into a polling place is you'll have to show ID to the people who are basically holding the voter registration book. There's a whole bunch of different IDs that you can bring. Obviously a driver's license, a passport, a social security card, your voter registration card. If you've got that nice fancy little yellow card, you can bring that in. And there's a whole list of acceptable IDs. Any formal ID will work for that. You will need to show that. They'll find your name on the register, and then they will sign you out a ballot slip. Most places now do electronic voting, and so you'll actually have sort of a blank card that they'll feed into the machine. You'll do your voting, you'll get to click everything, you'll get a summary screen to make sure you clicked all the things you thought you were clicking, and then you will print it out, and the paper ballot will print out. It's all anonymous, so they will have you put your little paper ballot in a sleeve so the voting poll workers can't see it, and you'll take it over to a drop box and slide it in there. So pretty good systems. Your polling place workers are all volunteers, so be nice to them on the day. They're volunteering their time to be there to help our democracy work. Couple things you can't do in the polls. You cannot campaign in the polls, and there's actually a rule about electioneering outside of polling places, and you'll see signs posted when you're sort of crossing the threshold for where no more campaigning can be done. So don't plan on doing that. Certainly no intimidating voters or preventing, none of that. And also, again, you cannot bring electronics, cameras, those types of things into a polling place. It's a fine if you do that. So I had a student ask if they could have extra credit for voting, and I said, no, you can't take a picture of yourself in the polling place. That's not allowable there. So please go vote, but no, you can't take a picture there. So don't bring those things in. Many of our polling places in West Virginia will not be super crowded, but there is the potential, especially if you're in more high population areas, that you may have to wait in line for a bit. So if you are mobility challenged or other things, feel free to bring a chair, bring something to help you get through there. Many of us will see on TV very, very long polling lines in major metropolitan areas. So just plan ahead there. If you're going to need something to drink, if you're going to need a snack, need a chair, come ready to go. And again, you can avoid all of that if you vote early or you vote absentee. So.
Absolutely. So obviously we want to make sure that we're appreciating the poll workers. As you mentioned, they have a very long day that day, up very, very early, and they stay very late to make sure that folks are able to vote. So I've appreciated that thought. And, you know, we know that folks want to be very proud, and they should be, of voting. But the point about not taking photos in a polling place, we obviously don't want folks to do that. But obviously, if they get their sticker or they want to take a selfie in their car after they get back out to their vehicle or leave the polling place, absolutely, that's great to do. But
absolutely, the one major downside of voting absentee, you do not get the cool sticker when you send in your vote. So.
Well, and some polling places don't have it either. So yeah. You know, we can create our own stickers.
There you go.
I know that Facebook, I'm sure, and a lot of other social media platforms will have filters and all kinds of things for that day. So we'll be definitely able to share that. So, you know, is there anything that folks can expect after they vote? So they go and vote, and they're ready to hear the results. You know, talk a little bit about what we might expect later in the day on election day.
Yeah, so later in the day on election day, polls will start coming in. Polls close on the East Coast usually at about 7 o'clock. It won't close in California until 7 o'clock their time or later. Anyone who is in line at a polling place when the polls close gets to vote, and so they may stay open a little later there. I highly anticipate we will not have final results of the presidential election on November 3rd or November 4th. And that is going to be very, very frustrating to a lot of people. But between, again, later closing polling places and the sheer number of absentee ballots that we're going to have this year, those votes deserve to be counted. Those are true and honest votes there. And so we've got to take time to collect those and count those. This is a problem all the time. We always have absentee ballots coming in after the election, but again, with COVID going on and this sort of push by many states to encourage absentee voting and vote by mail, it's going to take longer to find out these results. In West Virginia, if you are voting absentee, your absentee ballot needs to be postmarked by election day. So again, it'll take a couple days for that to make it to your county clerk's office where they will count those. And it's just going to take a while. So don't be surprised. It's not a bad thing that we're waiting and counting all of these votes. But it may not have the pizzazz that many of us are looking for on election night to know who, especially for president, gets to that 270 electoral college votes and the win there.
Absolutely. So if folks want to get involved before the election day or on election day, we talked about poll workers, we talked about some different things. How can folks get engaged in the democratic process, you know, up through election day?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of things that are going on here. Very simply, in your own local towns, your own families, your own friendship groups, you know, make sure everybody's registered to vote. Make sure they all have their plan about what's going on. You can do your part in your small corner of the world to mobilize people and get going. There are a lot of organizations out there that are doing voter registration or voter mobilization drives. Some of these are nonpartisan, mobilizing anybody. Some of them are partisan, so you can talk to your party offices or again, any of those community organizations, national organizations. There's all kinds of phone banks and things, again, that are mostly just circled around getting people informed, getting people registered, and getting people mobilized to go vote, to make sure this democratic process really works there. So yeah, you can do your part. Put your stickers on your cars, put the yard signs out, you know, do your part to generate some excitement and get people knowledgeable and out there to vote.
So I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. So if you had someone who said, well, if we're not going to know who's going to be the winner of a specific race or any race on November 3rd. You know, why should I vote? Why does this matter? And talk a little bit about really the importance, which you've already mentioned, the importance of taking the time to vote or to count all the votes that come in. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I get so many people who say, well, it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. I don't care. We need to care. We need to care. Your vote does matter. Ultimately, we are giving our governing officials permission to make decisions on our behalf. And I'm a big fan of saying, if you're not playing the game, someone else is playing that game for you. So if you're not getting your voice heard, someone is. And they may be saying and getting a voice heard that you're not particularly happy with. So make sure you do your part there. We will know who a new president is. We may not know it the day of, but we will know eventually, and that person will get to rule, to govern for the next 4 years. And will have tremendous implications for the country as a whole. So yeah, do your part, put your say out there, and make sure you're playing the game, because there are some big ramifications for that.
And remember that folks have not always had the ability to do this. And so remembering that and honoring those folks as you go and exercise your right to vote on or before November 3rd. So wrapping this up, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kent. This was very, very helpful and informative, and I hope that it helps our campus community and the larger community be informed and prepared to go vote this election season. So do you have any final comments on voting or the election, or any other thoughts that you might want to share?
Just again, elections are exciting times for political scientists, but they should be exciting times for everybody. This is our chance to really make a difference. We only hold elections for president every 4 years. This is your chance to get your say in and get your say heard. And I very much appreciate what you said, that there's a lot of people that haven't been able to vote that still can't vote. And so those of us that can need to take advantage of that opportunity and make sure that, again, we get our voices heard.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for your time. Again, this program series to help all of us be prepared and informed as leaders on our campus and in our community is provided by the WVU Tech Women's Leadership Program. And if you have other topics or ideas that you would want to share, please send those to the Tech Student Life Vanity account, which is Tech Student Life, all one word, at mail.wvu.edu. Thank you again, and thank you, Dr. Kent, and let's all get out to vote.